so far throughout this course, I've been sharing various best practices with all of you. So I've been doing a lot of split tests myself to see what works better, what doesn't work, etc., etc. And that's what I've been sharing throughout this course. But it's really important that you know how to split test yourself as well, because I can only share what's working for me, and I can only give you a head start. But from there, you'll have to actually figure out to see what's working for your campaign and what is not working. And unless you're some kind of magician, there's no way you can just guess that, right? There's no way. Even I don't know beforehand what's going to work. The only way I actually know what's working is by split testing things. In other words, making small changes to an ad, making small changes to my campaign, and then comparing those numbers with each other. And only then I'm able to actually learn, like, all right, this kind of headline, this works better, or this kind of image, it doesn't work, or whatever it is. Because only then you're going to keep on improving your campaign over and over. Because usually when you start a new campaign, it may not be profitable right away, but by gathering data and by seeing, like, right, it may not be profitable right away, but I see that this part is working really well and this part isn't. So then you remove the part that is not working and you continue with the part that is working. You improve that, you make some changes, you see, hey, what's working better? And that is what split testing is all about. It's all about figuring out what's working and what's not without the guesswork, by actually seeing what your audience actually responds to. And that is why I want to go deeper into split testing in this very video. Now, before I'm going to tell you how I run my split test, I want to go into some key lessons that you need to know first. So the first thing is that you should only be testing one thing at every given time. So that's basically the only way where you can actually learn something for your split test. I'll give you an example. Let's say you just created a Facebook ad with a certain image and a certain title and a certain description, and you want to run a split test to see if you can make it improve better. So what you do is you duplicate that Facebook ad, and you're going to change the title and the image. Now what's going to happen, let's say a week later, you're going to check your Facebook stats, and you see that the new one is actually performing better, which is awesome. You improved your campaign, which is all good. However, you have no clue whether it's actually performing better because of the change you made in your headline or in your image, right? And that's why it's important to only test one thing at a given time. So in other words, first of all, you're going to try, for example, the image to see if that has a meaningful impact. And then also you're going to change the title, because this way you could, for example, test out 3 different images, right? And see which one is better. And then once that's done, you can then go ahead and, for example, split test 3 different headlines and see which one works better for that. And if you would just go about into testing all 3 images and all 3 headlines at the same time, you would have 9 different variations. First of all, that's oftentimes way too much to get any meaningful insights. Secondly, you still wouldn't know what actually is working well. So it's really important to focus on one thing at every single time. Now also, when deciding what you're actually going to split test, it's good to always ask yourself, like, what will have the biggest impact in my campaign? I mean, there's some things that will likely have somewhat of an impact, but probably not the biggest one. So for example, inside your Facebook ads account, you can set your call to action. So this will mean that you can have a button to show up right here. So for example, book now, contact us, download. Now, I'm not saying that this doesn't have any impact. It surely can have an impact on your click-through rate and your results. However, it's likely to have a way smaller effect compared to, for example, testing out different videos in your ad, or whether to use different copy, like the actual text that goes on top, right? So it's really important to sort of ask yourself, like, what's going to have the biggest impact in my campaign? And I know this is something that's going to be sort of like a gut feeling. It's no way to know for sure. I'll give you some examples of how I go about it in just a minute. But it's good to know that there's no right or wrong here. But just ask yourself, like, what do you think will have a bigger impact? What can have an actual big impact on the result of my campaign? And thirdly, also be realistic when going to split test. So first of all, don't split test if you only have a $5 a day budget, because you don't have enough, you won't have enough meaningful data to actually draw a conclusion on. I suggest to have at least $10 a day budget for every variation. And also don't test out a lot of different variations. So keep it at like a max of between 2 and 4, ideally 3 or 4 variations. Because if you're going to test out, for example, 8 different variations, you'll need to have a lot of traffic and a lot of views and spending a lot of money before you can actually have any meaningful insights. Because if you let's say you're optimizing for a purchase and you would get, at some campaigns you would get 1 sale and some others you will not have any sale, or maybe 2, then there's no way you can still draw a conclusion, because this is still completely random. And that's why it's really important to only have just a couple, I would suggest 2, 3, or 4 different variations at every single time, so you can still get fairly fast results without having to wait like a long time or spending a lot of money before drawing any conclusions. Now, so far so good. How do I actually go about it? So the first thing I do, as I just mentioned, is to estimate what could have the biggest impact. And like I said, this is totally a gut feeling, but it's a good thing to get started with. So for example, the biggest thing I usually go for is different hooks or angles of my story. So earlier in this course, I actually talked about the actual end goal of your audience, so what you're going to promise. And usually, whatever your end goal is, whatever you describe as the thing that you're trying to get and what you're trying to give to your audience, that's going to have oftentimes the biggest impact. And it's sort of good to start off with that, because this is not something you can easily change later on. So let's say you would just have one hook or one angle and you start testing everything, right? You start testing your headline and your image and all of that. And then later on, maybe you want to test out a different hook. You want to talk about a different kind of outcome. It basically means that all your current work has been in vain. Like there's your current headlines, you wouldn't be able to use it. Your current images, you wouldn't be able to use it because you're promising them a totally different result, right? So for example, if I would do this ad for my viral campaigns, or what I actually did is I was asking myself, like, what is the actual outcome I want to give to my audience? Is it to get more traffic, or is it to get more email subscribers? These are two completely different angles. And I started testing out by writing an ad for, hey, I'm going to show you how to boost your email list, drive and get more email subscribers using viral traffic. And I also mentioned, like, I also wrote an ad saying, hey, I'm going to get you more traffic using word of mouth. And these are completely different things. And my whole point of this was just to see what angle would actually work best. And yes, for this ad, these ads were completely different, so a lot of different things. But the main important difference between those ads was to have a different hook or a different story. Now, if you are already in business and you already know how you're communicating your offer or how you're communicating your service or your product to your audience, then yes, you can skip this. But if you're not really sure, then this is usually a good thing to just have a triad and just go for 2 completely different ways of describing your thing or your product or your service, to see what will have the biggest impact on your audience. And from that, you will then pick the one that's working best, and then you can go to the next biggest thing. So that's usually the biggest thing, the biggest impact that you can have. After that, I usually go for testing out different videos, because I know that the video will have a big impact on the results. So I leave everything the exact same. All I do is upload a different video. Thirdly, a written story, the actual story I have above my video. That's usually a good impact as well. So that will be the next thing to actually test. The headline of the actual ad, which goes right below the video. And finally, also the video thumbnail. So which thumbnail are people seeing in case they don't have the video on autoplay, which means that they have to click on the video first. What kind of thumbnail are they going to see? Now, obviously, I'm not saying that you have to follow this order. You can totally go for a different order, depending on what you think will have the biggest impact for you. And once again, there's no right or wrong here. All I'm saying is that just take a guess. No need to overthink it. What will have the biggest impact? And we're going to start with that. So that's the first thing. Now, secondly, you'll have to decide what your KPI is. In other words, what is going to be the thing that you want to optimize for? Like, is it like based on what are you going to decide which one is actually a winner? So there's various things you can use. So for example, your click-through rate or your cost per click, you could use that. Your cost per lead in case you are sending people into an opt-in page, or for example, conversions. In other words, purchases. Now, you may think that because we're all trying to get people to become a customer and make our ads profitable, that you would always go and optimize for conversions. But that's actually not the case, because oftentimes you'll need to spend quite a bit of money in order to get someone to buy your product, because they'll have to see your ad, they'll have to click on your ad. Then on your ad, if in case, let's say you have an opt-in page, they'll have to enter their name and email address. So that's an extra step. Then they'll need to go through whatever content you have prepared for them. For example, a webinar training or an email follow-up system. And then after that, they may or may not become a customer, right? So you'll need to have a lot of people initially seeing your Facebook ad before someone actually makes a purchase. And because of that, it's going to be really hard to make any meaningful insights on that without spending a lot of money on your Facebook ads. Because you could be spending, for example, like if I would take my own examples, I could spend $100 and still not have a single conversion, right? And I know that I need to have quite a few conversions to see and actually have a meaningful difference between various Facebook ads. And that's why I usually don't ever optimize for conversion, or at least I never really look at the conversions numbers in terms of deciding which split test is going to be the winner or which one is going to be the loser. So usually it's better to go for metrics that may not be perfect, but it's there to get faster results. So for example, I oftentimes, if in case you're sending people to an opt-in form as well, I oftentimes look at the cost per lead. And this is, I know that it's not always perfect, because it's totally possible that one Facebook ad could have a lower cost per lead. In other words, it seems to be the winner. However, maybe those people, they're just signing up, but they're not actually making a purchase. And I know that this is one of the potential mistakes here that could happen, but I just take that for granted, just so I can actually make faster decisions, and I can run my split test faster, because typically that would still outperform if then comparing to actually wait way longer to optimize for the actual conversion. So I typically go for the cost per lead, and I would do that when you're spending at least 2 up to 4 times the cost per lead per variation. Now, what do I mean with that? So let's say my goal is to get leads for roughly $5 per lead, right? So I would want to spend for a split test at least between 2 times or 4 times that. So between, in case it's $5 per lead, between $10 and $20 per variation, per Facebook ad variation, to get any meaningful data. So it really depends on how much I'm spending. Now, obviously, you may not actually know about what your cost per lead is. Now, usually there's some ways to sort of have a feeling for that. You can ask around people in the same industry. And you typically have a number in mind what a lead would be worth for you, right? If a lead is worth you like $4 or $5, then you can start with that, for example, as a metric. But what's important is that, let's say I'm ready to spend $5 per lead, but I'm only spending $5 on a Facebook ad every single day. Then I would on average only get 1 lead per day, and I would not have enough data to actually make a meaningful conclusion, right? So I would not be spending enough. So either I need to spend more, right? Or I should go for a simpler KPI, which is, once again, it's less accurate, but you get faster results. So in that case, I would look at the click-through rate and the cost per click, right? So if I would be spending, let's say, between $5 and $10 on a certain ad set on every variation inside my split test, I would not have enough information to make any meaningful conclusions for the cost per lead, right? And I would definitely not have any meaningful data for the conversions. However, I can immediately see which ads would get a higher click-through rate, and I would use that as the basis of my decision. Now, I know that a higher click-through rate doesn't necessarily mean that I'm reaching the right kind of people, but in this case, I rather go for something quick where I can at least, on those numbers, it seems that it's the better choice, than to have to wait a very long time before getting any data in. And later on, as you will be spending more, you can optimize, for example, or you can look at your conversion. But initially, I would just start here if you're not spending that much. As you're spending more, go for the next sort of goal in your campaign. Before you actually are going into conversion. Now, obviously, it depends what your funnel looks like as well. So let's say you are sending people straight into an opt-in, straight into a sales page without any opt-in, then this one doesn't apply to you. Now, if in case you're selling something of like $20, you may get quite a few purchases into your Facebook ad campaign. Sorry. So you could actually optimize for conversions. You could actually look at the actual conversions. However, in case you are sending people to a sales page and you're selling something like $1,000, then there's no way you can actually do a really good split test for that unless you have like a mega budget, which I do not recommend for just testing. So in that case, I would either add in a lead form so you actually grab their details beforehand, or just optimize for simpler metrics like the click-through rate and cost per click. So I hope that makes sense. So far this is just preparation, right? Before we even have started any split test. Now the next thing to do is to create 3 or 4 variations. Like I said, between 2 or 4. Usually I go for between 3 and 4. And what I do is actually I do not create multiple ads in the same ad set. I create one ad in each ad set, and I'll show you in a second what I mean with that. So I run the test by comparing multiple ad sets, and the reason why I do that is because if I create one ad set with multiple ads inside, then Facebook will try to optimize it for me, but that's not always super accurate. So I prefer to just have my own, look at the numbers my own way, because usually Facebook will optimize for example, what the campaign objective is. So in some cases, your campaign objective might be, for example, traffic, or it might be conversions. But maybe you are planning to look at a different number. Maybe you're looking to check out the click-through rate, or maybe you're looking to check out the cost per lead, while the campaign objective is something different. In other words, you know what? Just let me show you. So right here, I'm inside a test account. So what I would do is I would first of all have one ad set. And usually I have a clear name as well. So it would, for example, be split test, or like something that is clear about why this one is different, so that you can actually see later on. And I'm going to open up the actual ad set. And here you would actually go and edit the actual Facebook ad. So let's say you would wanna have an image ad. You would have the text right here. And obviously, I showed you in a different video what kind of ads to create. So I'm not gonna recreate an ad right here. But you basically set it all up, and you would also make sure that everything on your ad set is all set and done in terms of like targeting. It's all set and done so that this could actually be go live. Now, instead of, for example, having multiple ad sets. So this is what some people would do: is they would either, for example, they would basically duplicate this ad inside of the same ad set. That's not what we're going to do. We're actually going back into the ad sets, and we're going to duplicate this whole ad. And we would call it, so we're going to put it in the existing campaign. So it's in the exact same campaign. And the reason why, that's the reason why I wanted you to have the targeting set on this ad set beforehand, because now we're going to make sure that this ad set has the exact same targeting. And some people think that it's going to be competing. I've never had any negative experience with this. This is always how I do all my split tests. So this would be, for example, and then I would have some kind of name that would be indicating for myself like why this one is different. So maybe this one is, for example, story about traffic, if that would be this ad, and then this would be, for example, story about getting leads, so that I know like this is what each one is about. And then I go into the traffic one. Here we would then change the actual ad, which is inside that same ad set, and then we would make the actual change. So let's say a different story, if we want to change it here, I would make the change inside this Facebook ad. And this would mean that right now we would have 2 ad sets, both with the exact same targeting, and in each ad set there's one ad, and here's another ad in this ad set. And that's how we run the split test. That's how I set it up. So once you've created your Facebook ads, so once you have multiple ad sets, and in every ad set you got one ad running, you need to let the ad run for a while. In other words, you need to gather some data so that later on you can look at that data and see which ad is the winner. Right now, how long should you run your ad, or how much should you spend? And it actually depends. It really depends, because if you are going to optimize, if you're going to look at your cost per click or your click-through rate, in other words, you want to find the Facebook ad with the highest click-through rate, then typically it's going to be enough if you have between 500 and 1,000 views on every variation. Once you hit that number, you can look at your cost per click and or your click-through rate and see which one is actually the best performer, and go for that one. However, in case you want to find out which ad is best to get more leads or maybe even more sales, then it's going to be completely different, because the question really is like, is the difference big enough? If I would if I would want to find an ad to see which one is getting me most customers, and one ad only has one sale while the other one has two, then I could be thinking like, oh, awesome, I just doubled the conversions. But that's obviously not the case. It could be completely random. It could be completely random because there's not enough information there. However, let's say I would be optimizing for leads, and one of my campaigns has 20 conversions while the other one has 40. Well, I've spent the same amount of money and I've reached the same amount of people. So now I'm pretty sure like, all right, this is actually performing way better, right? And right now, for me, it's actually sort of a gut feeling. So I know like, oh, is this difference big enough? But oftentimes I get people asking me like when is the difference big enough? And there's actually a way of knowing that for sure. Although it's not something that I would recommend to do every single time. It's just a lot of extra work. However, it could help you to find that answer initially, to sort of create that gut feeling as well. So for future reference, you know already like when the difference is going to be big enough. And this tool, it's actually a mathematical formula, and it's called the statistical significance. And it's something that's quite complicated. You don't have to follow it completely. Like there's no need for that actually. But basically what the statistical significance tells you is a percentage of the chance that something is performing better than the other one. So let's say something, like I said, with the example of one sale versus two sales, then the chance that the one with two sales is actually like on a mass scale performing better is actually not going to be super high because there's just not enough data. However, if I would have one variation with just one sale and the other one with like 100, then like the mathematical statistical significance will be like 100%, or at least very, very close to that, because the difference is so insanely big. Like it has to be true, right? It has to be enough data. Now, once again, you don't need to explain it, but there's actually, you don't need to understand the mathematical formula at all, but there's a little tool that I recommend you to use, and it's actually this one. And once again, this is not something that you need to use every single time, not at all actually. I'm not using this very frequently myself, but it helps to create it, to give you that answer of like when is it enough to help you formulate or create that gut feeling, so you know for future reference. And basically how this tool works is that normally you would use this on, for example, a landing page. You would say how many visitors you got and then how many conversions, whatever type of conversion that is. Now, as for your Facebook ads, I would actually recommend to enter in either the dollar amount that you spent on your ad set or the actual views that you have. Now, let's say I want to use this for an example ad, an example test. So let's say I got here 2 ad sets, and I want to see right now, I already see like, all right, so this one, I'm spending $7 for every viral webinar sign up, and this one I'm euros, sorry, and this one €3.20. So I already know right now that this one is going to be probably the winner, right? This one is going to be pretty good because I already have quite a few signups. So for this ad set, I got 160 signups. This one I got 82. Now, if this would have been 10 and 5, for example, then probably wouldn't have been enough. But right now, there's plenty of leads coming in, and this one is twice as expensive than this one. So the other one is definitely better, right? So I already know this right now, but if I wouldn't know this, what I would do is this. I would open up this tool. In the left-hand side panel, I would just enter in the dollar spent. So amount spent, 1151. And I got a total of, how many conversions? I got 160. So what's important is that on the right-hand side column, I would enter the actual conversion, the amount of times that the conversion happened. So I would not enter, for example, the cost per result here. It really has to be the amount of conversion. So if I'm optimizing for leads, how many leads? If I'm optimizing for clicks, how many clicks happened? If I'm optimizing for sales, how many sales happened? So I would enter that number right here. And basically what the control and different treatment is that this mathematical formula would basically have one, like this is the basis ad, if you will call it like that. And then there's like, what's the chance that this one converts better than this one, and etc. So let me just first enter the second one. So this one I spent 261 euros. So I'm just going to put in 261, and I got 82. Oops. And if I would have multiple ad sets, I can just click on and then just keep on adding. In this case, I'm going to hit calculate. And as you can see, The winning variation, treatment 1 is a 100% confidence level. So using this mathematical formula, this is like 100% 100% certain that this one is going to convert better. So definitely a clear winner. Typically, here it actually states you need to be 95% or more to trust the test results. I would go for at least 90%. Now, let's say this would be, if this would be completely different, just as an example, I would have 2 here and 1 here. As you can see, 69, and you would think like 69 is actually pretty good. It's actually not good at all, so it definitely needs to be 90 or higher. So let's say it would be 10, and this one would be, I don't know, 5. Really get closer. So this is just a good way of like discovering what would actually be the case and when it's actually enough. So if you're ever in doubt of like, do I have enough data? Should I let it keep running? Enter the amount of dollars right here, or the amount spent, and then the amount of times that your ideal conversion happened, whether it is clicks, whether it is the amount of email signups, or whether it is the amount of sales. You can enter that right here on the right hand side, hit calculate. Ideally it should be over 90. And if you want to go for the, like, if you're a bit of a perfectionist, then go for 95. And this is just, once again, not something to keep on using every single time because it takes up a lot of time, but it helps to sort of create that feeling of when is it enough. And then once it's actually enough, analyze and select the winner. In other words, the one that is performing best, you're going to keep that one, obviously, and the one that is not performing best, you're going to pause it or stop it or even delete it. It doesn't really matter. But the point is that now you know what is the best one. And if you're really proactive, like I do, like what I always try to do is I always, whenever I finish a certain ad set, a certain split test, I try to have the next one ready right away. So if I tested out a various some kind of a headline, then all right, what's the next thing I can test? Or if I tested a certain video, what's the next thing I can test afterwards? So because in the end of the day, it's like while you're spending money on Facebook, it's good to get traffic and get customers and get leads, etc., etc. But at the same time, I'm trying to use all that information to learn more as well. Even though I know this is might be a little bit of time consuming, so it may be not for you at this point, but if you're able to spend more time on it, this is like the best way to learn from Facebook ads, because while you're spending money on Facebook ads, you will learn as you go, and you will learn what your audience, what engages them, what makes them click, what makes them sign up, what kind of audiences were working well. And obviously I'll show you some examples inside the case study later on as well. But this is really something that I know is not going to be for everyone right from the start, because if you are only there, if you're only willing to spend a low budget on Facebook ads, then I wouldn't start off split testing right away. I would just go with the flow initially. But in case you have a little bit of money to spend on Facebook ads, I would highly recommend to use it to get data in and to run ongoing split tests in your campaigns, because only that way you're going to know for sure what is working inside your campaign and what is not.